entrance monitoring our speed all the way. It's a steep dive under the overhead. And we're through, picking up speed as we accelerate into Cabin de la Concorde.
Pretty sure that's not supposed to happen. Oh well, it's not like anything worse could occur on this track. So today's Ancient DOS game is Slipstream 5000, and to be perfectly honest, I'd never even heard of this thing all the way up until I started doing this little web show of mine. And when I first started playing this game for this week's episode, I was kind of left wondering why this game slipped by me and why very few people talk about it. The game is extremely well balanced, the control is tight, responsive, and simple, and it plays at a really good frame rate given the full 3D graphics on display. However, as I played further into this, I started to notice a couple things, and when I got to the Japan track in particular, I just facepalmed multiple times. While no one seems to have ever officially said anything to this effect, I think the reason this game is often forgotten is because the music is lousy and the stereotyping is out of control. Not to mention the very last level feels like it was never finished, even though it was. I'll explain what I mean later. The point I'm getting at is that this game is plenty of fun, but not very memorable and full of uncomfortable jokes, just made me wish I'd skipped all the cutscenes. Slipstream 5000 was developed by the Software Refinery and published through Gremlin Interactive in 1995. It's a 1-to-2 player combat racing game, which is slightly unusual given that this game does have networking support. It still only supports a maximum of 2 human players at a time. It only supports VGA 320 by 256 color graphics, and only supports Sound Blaster cards and the Windows sound system for both sound and music, though a few other devices are also supported for music alone. Given that the music in this game isn't very good though, you may opt to just turn it off instead. As for its current release date, it's still commercial and is yet another game you can obtain digitally from the Good Old Games website at www.gog.com for $6. Physical copies, however, are dirt cheap and very easy to come across, often going for as little as $2 to $3 for the CD in a jewel case, and you can find brand new, never before opened boxed copies for under the $20 mark. It kind of further proves my point that people don't remember this game all too well, given how easy and cheap it is to acquire. There's virtually no story to this thing, so let's just jump into the gameplay. Unlike the vast majority of racing games out there, which would involve vehicles which drive down a track, either on wheels or some kind of futuristic hovering technology, Slipstream 5000 actually involves flight, so you're not locked to the surface of a track. Indeed, the courses in this game are more akin to tunnels, sometimes with a special transparent ceiling or walls to keep competitors locked into the racing area. Before you begin a race, though, you need to select your racer. There's 10 to choose from, and while the vehicle selection screen is kinda neat, there's no hard info on the specs of these vehicles anywhere in this game, not even in the manual. And trust me, the specs are different for each vehicle. But to be honest, they're not that different. The fastest vehicle in the game is only about 10% faster than the slowest vehicle. And so yes, the stats do vary, but not enough that you can't win every course with every racer. If you're playing in practice mode, you'll immediately choose a track to race on with no competition. In the single race and championship modes, you'll be prompted to arm your vehicle with weapons and upgrades. There's actually a fairly decent variety of weapons, though aside from the blasters built into every vehicle by default, all of the weapons are ammo limited. So I find it's better to focus on turbo upgrades and system upgrades. Upgrading the turbo allows your turbo boosts to last longer and push you to higher overall speeds. The system upgrades, on the other hand, amount to doubling your blaster energy and firing rate, greatly increasing the targeting range of all weapons, and the ability to double the ammo you get with weapon pods. Now, the single race mode has you select a track from the 10 available, with all but the first one locked, whereby you unlock new tracks by finishing prior tracks in a decent position. On the other hand, the championship mode will take you through the entire selection of 10 circuits, at least on hard difficulty. One of the things that difficulty selection does is alter how many tracks you can get to in the championship mode, so in order to see every track, you have to play on hard. Which, I gotta be honest, is actually a fair and intense challenge, where you can make a few mistakes here and there and still win, but if you screw up too much, you're not going to succeed. The championship mode also has the two announcers in the game do introductions to the tracks and perform flybys to give you an idea of what to expect on the track as you race down it. These flybys are a really clever and welcome feature. What isn't a welcome feature is the humor. The first two tracks are both American tracks, and the humor feels appropriate and does the job. Then you get to the Amazon track, and while it's not immediately obvious to your senses that something's up with the jokes, you get this sort of inkling that the tone of the jokes doesn't quite feel right. I mean, let me give you an example here.
Also got my bullwhip too, though I've not seen many cows down here so far. No space to maneuver here, that's for sure. There's less room in my tent. Well, you shouldn't have put that snake there then, should you?
However, it's when you get to the Japan track that you realize just how uncomfortable this has gotten. The spelling and pronunciation is not only atrocious, but the jokes just feel as though they're in really bad taste. Every non-American track in this game suffers from this blatant stereotyping, and besides the music, is the only aspect of this game that really hinders the experience. The racing itself is actually incredibly straightforward. The controls are airplane style, where up is down and down is up, and using a flight stick with this game feels incredibly natural. You also have controls for your blasters, acceleration, and changing your selected weapon. Now, you'll notice I didn't say anything about brakes. There's technically no brakes in this game, so to slow down, you simply release the accelerator. Though there is actually a reverse acceleration mode, where you always have acceleration and the accelerator button turns into a braking button. This is actually the way I recommend playing the game, because quite frankly, 99% of the time, you want to be going full throttle. Now, every vehicle in this game comes equipped with a blaster system and a turbo system. Your blasters are used to damage your opponents. Each time you hit someone with your blasters, they take 1% engine damage and 1% control damage, double that on hard difficulty. And it may not sound like much, but remember that your blasters recharge at a fair rate and can be fired several times in a row. So if you manage to get someone in your sights for a good distance, you can really lay into them. It won't immediately stop them in their tracks, but it'll slow them down and make it harder for them to corner, thus making it easier for you to overtake them. And this is where the clever balancing comes in. The moment you overtake someone, they're fully capable of doing to you what you just did to them. So part of the strategy of this game is not only overtaking your opponents, but not giving them a line of sight to lay into you with their own weapons. Since even though your weapons automatically lock onto and home in on targets, said target needs to be pretty close to the center of your view to be targetable, and this restriction affects opponents as well. The game is essentially self-balancing as a result of all of this. In fact, when you set this game on hard mode, every opponent is given their primary stats and an AI to take full advantage of them. The AI is smart enough too to just shoot power-up drones, dodge control disruptors, collect useful power-ups, travel into the repair zones when needed, and they'll also shoot each other, not just you. The only real deficiency with the AI is that it kind of likes to fly on a set path and doesn't deviate along it unless it's trying to dodge another vehicle. As a result, the AI's movement is predictable, as is their line of fire, which makes it possible to stay out of its line of fire simply by knowing where it'll be pointing when it's behind you. Now, there is a monetary system in this game, but thankfully it's only used to upgrade your equipment and buy new weapons. Since the tracks themselves have repair zones on them, when a race is complete, your vehicle is fully repaired. You can also find money tokens on the tracks or from shooting down power-up drones to get yourself some extra cash on top of what you make from crossing the finish line. Also, since there's no upgrade which alter the raw stats of your vehicle, there's no way for the AI opponents to misbalance the game by rocketing ahead in stat boosts with the money they earn. And the presentation in this game is also surprisingly well done. I already mentioned the vehicle selection screen, but even the upgrade screen has a nice touch of showing you the vehicle you selected suspended and awaiting maintenance. The cockpits of each vehicle vary slightly as well, adding yet another level of immersion. And when you finish a race, you can even do a replay of the entire thing, along with some basic camera controls to see the action from different angles. Although, unlike some racing games like Stunts and Carmageddon, the replay system here is very rudimentary, and doesn't even have any playback controls. So as well polished as the graphics and gameplay are, there are a couple things which bug me. The first is the France track. Not only is the stereotyping from the announcers in full force, but there's an odd glitch with 2 spots on this track which can end up causing racers to get stuck in mid-air, as though they were colliding with something, even though they're not. What's weird about this issue is that it only happens at high frame rates. The lower the frame rate is, the less of an issue this is. However, this only counts the frame rate which the game should be attaining, since if things go very wrong and multiple racers get stuck at the same time, yeah, goodbye frame rate. The final track is also unusual for being very short and having very little in the way of graphics. It's supposed to be a run through New York City, and what's odd is the flyby makes mention of all these different spots in New York, yet you're just flying across blank water. In fact, the only thing they squeezed in was the Statue of Liberty. This is why I feel this track wasn't finished. They either ran out of time, or what they had in mind wouldn't fit within the memory or CPU limitations they were working within. However, the Japan track worked out just fine graphically, so yeah, I'm not really sure what happened here. The last thing I want to talk about are some quirky things about this game, which aren't necessarily bad, but somewhat unusual, either in a good or a bad way. The first of these things is the 2-player split screen mode. Now this is a really rare thing to find in a PC game, as most PC games with multiplayer support either do everything on one screen, or require an external connection to at least one more computer. And yeah, the players are crashing like mad because I'm trying to control both at the same time on my own. It's a lot harder to do than you might think. Another quirky thing is that despite how high the frame rate can get, the mouse cursor has a terrible frame rate no matter what you do. And it's weird that the far more difficult to code aspect of this game runs better. Another quirky thing is that all the races in this game are 6 laps long. I don't know, it just seems weird that they'd go with 6. Though to be fair, given how well balanced everything is, this gives you ample time to recover if you have a bad start. The last quirky thing has to do with losing. See, if either your engine damage or control damage hits maximum, your vehicle will crash out of the sky and you'll get a game over. Sounds fair enough. Except that once this happens, there's no way to quit the game save for using the menus, which will take you back to the main menu, not the championship you happen to be in the middle of. Thus, if you haven't saved your progress in the championship, well, you're gonna have to start all over. Also, the only way to quit the game and return to the OS is from the in-game menu. And the main menu doesn't have an option, and the escape key just simply reruns the credits logo. So, to quit back to DOS, you have to start a new game, then quit the DOS from the in-game menu. It's kind of like how in Windows 95 you'd click Start to ultimately shut down your system. Slipstream 5000 is so close to being an extremely good game, yet falls short and only really qualifies as just plain old good. If they'd actually put some halfway decent music in this thing and axed the stereotyping, this game would be a lot more memorable and a lot more fun. As it stands, I still found it fun to actually do the races, given how balanced they are. Not to mention any opportunity to break out my flight stick's always a good one. That is one aspect that might scare some people off as well, is that it's not a car racing game, it's a jet racing game. And while the physics aren't anywhere close to real physics, skill with flying games is somewhat necessary to have a chance here. Thus, the kinds of people who'd get the most enjoyment out of this game in particular would be racing fans and fans of flight sims. If that's not you, then, well, this game might be worth trying. It probably wouldn't hold your interest for very long. And due to the problems I've mentioned, may not hold your interest anyways. Now, I did try various DOSBox settings to fix the bug with the France track, but to no avail. Just remember to save your game in the championship mode right before flying the France track so that if things do glitch out badly, you can just restart it. As for everything else, just leave cycle set to auto and turn off timed intervals for the joystick support. You may also want to adjust the mixer rate for Sound Blaster cards as well. Unlike with last week's game where the sound and voice was too quiet compared to the music, this time around it's too loud. So turning the Sound Blaster rate down is a good way to balance things out. Mind you, the music in this game is so bad that you may just turn the music off anyways, in which case you wouldn't have to mess with the mixer settings at all. Anywho, that's all for this episode of Ancient DOS Games. Episode 169 will be on Saturday, August 1st, and we'll be taking a look at a game where you can take control of different creatures, many of which have their own unique way of seeing the world from a first-person view. And if you think you know which game is like that, then be sure to send your guess to adg@pixelships.com, and stay tuned as the game in question may come as a surprise depending on which platform you originally played it on.
Slipstreamer, you finished fourth. 3 points. Gotta try harder.